Hello, I'm Amelia Leavenworth with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. Welcome to this edition of Arizona Wildlife Views. Tonight we take on the critics who say Arizona is a dry, lifeless brown desert, as we show them a time of year when our landscapes are lush and saturated in amazing color. Plus, a valley artist that old school and new archers are embracing for his art of the outdoors. We've got all that and more tonight on Arizona Wildlife Views.
Arizona Wildlife Views is brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sport Fish and Wildlife Restoration Fund.
Arizona may not have the brightest of colors all year long, but when spring decides it's time to make an appearance, it's a study in bursts of technicolor brilliance.
Where are you guys from?
We are from Rochester, New York.
New York. Oh, so this looks different from New York, huh? Yeah. New York, you'd have a shovel right now.
24 inches of snow yesterday.
Oh, 4 inches. Wow.
24.
24.
2 feet, and we are here.
Wow. So you don't need a snow shovel here, huh?
No.
There's an old saying that says April showers bring May flowers, but Arizona operates on its own timetable.
For Arizona, March is the month. So March is always our month for the wildflowers out here. We will see after that, we'll start seeing our trees come into blossom. So we'll get to see our Palo Verde trees and our mesquite trees and our ironwood trees. So they all come into blossom too. And then of course our cactus. Our cactus bloom a little bit later than that, and we'll start seeing that. People come out of the desert expecting that it's just dead. You know, they think the desert is a dead place, but it's actually full of life. And not only does it have animal life in it, but the plant life is just, you know, blooming right now, just crazy blooming. All through Arizona, we're in our prime of our wildflower season. And here at Lake Pleasant Regional Park, we're seeing a burst of color throughout the desert. It's wonderful out here. So we have lots of people visiting from out of state, and even the in-staters are coming out to look at the color of the desert. It's really nice this year.
If Crayola had a desert garden, Arizona's springtime blooms would be it.
We, first started out seeing some of the small little flowers like the fillory coming out. Then we saw the wild heliotrope, which is in the Phacelia family with the scorpion weed. And then we started seeing the larger flowers. So we saw the Mexican gold poppy coming out, which is a brilliant orangish yellow, it's very pretty. And then we saw the desert hyacinths, which are in the onion family, very long with purple flower, very nice. And then the lupin, the Coulter's lupin out here is really pretty. So it's got multiple flowers on its stalk, so it's very pretty out here. So we're starting to see the brittle bush starting to bloom, and we're seeing also the globe mallow blooming too.
If you've lived here long enough, you know our desert doesn't suffer fools. It can be a wickedly hot, thorny, prickly place. But in the spring, after winter rains, for about a month, the cool of a land that's had its fill of water can come alive with gentle breezes and enough hues of color to lift any desert dweller's spirits.
So we had some early rains, and then we had some continuing rains that really made the flowers blossom. All through the year, we see different stages of the desert, and this part of the stage of the desert is just more of a splendor of color. And I just enjoy it because you see so many new life coming out, and it actually draws the animal life out too, because they have new things to eat. And so we see a lot of animal activity, and we also see the color of the desert.
Wildflowers sprout everywhere, sometimes in exhilarating waves of orange alongside quiet backroads. It's a sight to behold, to be remembered, to be missed. Until the next time, when the big, fabulous bloom show comes to town.
My name is Brian McBroom and I'm the bow maker.
Brian McBroom is the ultimate craftsman and artist, a true bowyer.
I make archery equipment, traditional archery equipment, longbows and recurves particularly. I make 5 different models of bows. 4 of them are longbows and 1 model of a recurve.
What's the difference between a recurve and a longbow?
The limb design. The limb design and the grip are quite different. This offers better performance, and this bow, the longbow, tends to be more forgiving for someone who has flaws in the way they shoot.
But Brian's traditional bows don't have sights for aiming, nor do they have wheels and pulleys like these compound bows. In the archery world, if you're shooting with a longbow or a recurve, you may as well be using a musket compared to an AK-47.
The people that use this type of gear oftentimes use the gear for the nostalgia. The history of archery is something that people enjoy.
Brian McBroom's bows are beautiful throwbacks. The traditional bows he crafts exude a purity, harkening back into legend and history, from Robin Hood to the great Native American tribes who were huntsmen and warriors.
You need different muscles when you pull a bow back. Your back muscles are really key to shooting this type of gear. The difference is with a compound bow, the poundage lets off the more you pull it back, where with this it gets heavier the more you pull it back. The process of building a bow starts with making laminations, which are the core of the bow itself. In a longbow you'll have 3 or 4 laminations within the limb itself, and then on my design you have fiberglass on the outside. And then you build the handle, which is your exotic hardwood, and then you can do tip overlays or overlays on the handle itself, and that's what goes into it.
Brian measures and cuts out each of the layers of wood and inlays according to his client requests. Then he takes each layer and glues them together.
You lay everything on this form, including the handle, and then there's a top piece that goes on top of this, and then it takes the shape. Once it all gets clamped together, it takes the shape of the bow itself.
Next, he puts the layered bow into an oven.
And you wait for the glue to dry and cure, and then you take it off and you cut it to shape. The finishing process is labor intensive. There's a lot of sanding that's involved. Starting at 100 grit sandpaper all the way down to 800, and maybe even more depending on what the material is. And then you use a high velocity, low pressure spray gun, much like what someone would use to spray the finish on an automobile. And you put several coats on, anywhere from 4 to 6 usually.
A compound bow is complex, capable of propelling an arrow about 70 yards. A traditional bow uses essentially the same technology used in the 14th century. If you're lucky, you can shoot your arrow 20 to 25 yards. So, why own one?
There's a lot of guys that like the idea of having something unique, a one of a kind, because every one of my bows is unique to itself. I couldn't build the same bow twice if I wanted to, in terms of the wood grain and the materials that I use. And there's a lot of people that really like that concept.
Brian McBroom's wooden bows are history and tradition at your fingertips, made for those hunters who like the zen of hunting in the old ways.
So World Turtle Day is May 23rd, and we try and celebrate it through the department in the Turtles Project by hosting the annual turtle trapping at the Phoenix Zoo. If you've ever been to the zoo and you've enjoyed the turtles, none of the turtles that you see in any of the waterways belong here. None of them are native to Arizona. They have been released intentionally by people thinking that they're doing a good thing for the pet turtle that has outgrown its aquarium, its uniqueness, or has become a little stinkier or brightier than they're interested in keeping anymore. So they see turtles here and they release them thinking that they've done an incredible thing for their turtle. Turtles can be a great gift, but you need to think about the fact that you're looking at a 60-year commitment, longer if you're looking at terrestrial tortoise species. You could have an animal in a family for over 100 years. So think about it. Make sure that you have the space requirements, that you can provide adequate care, and that you have a long-term plan. If you live in an apartment, I don't really recommend getting a turtle because it needs to have access to natural light, and even like one of the little pond sliders that are so tempting and so bright green and adorable in the stores, they're going to get a lot bigger and they get very stinky. You need to have an incredible filtration system, and so if you are going to keep them inside, there is an expense associated with keeping them well. We do have quite a few pages dedicated to turtles at the department's website. And then we also have links to information on pond sliders and other commonly kept turtles so that folks can have an idea on how to care for them.
Arizona became the state it is today thanks to those 5 C's we learned about in grade school: copper, cotton, cattle, citrus, and climate. Well, there's another C that continues to make this state great, and that's critters. With over 800 species, Arizona is in the top 5 states for wildlife diversity, and Arizona Game and Fish manages all of those critters for the people of Arizona. Each one is special, but some are a pretty big deal. They've been selected as official state symbols, earning them a spot in our statutes and in the Arizona Capitol Museum. To get to know some of these critters, we spoke with the Game and Fish Department's Watchable Wildlife Program Manager, Randy Babb.
Yeah, cactus wren is our state bird.
We started with the cactus wren, which became the Arizona state bird back in 1931.
Very, very distinctive and iconic. It's the largest wren in the United States. Nests are often, but not always, constructed in cactus like cholla. So the spinier, the better.
The next 4 critters achieved symbol status in 1986. They were selected by grade school kids as part of the Game and Fish Department's Arizona Wildlife Awareness Program. The Arizona ridge-nosed rattlesnake beat out the Gila monster as the kids' choice for state reptile.
Ridge-nosed rattlesnake is one of our smallest rattlesnake species in the state. They're found in southeastern Arizona and a handful of mountain ranges just north of the Mexican border. As young, they actually feed quite a bit on centipedes.
The students selected the Arizona tree frog as the state amphibian.
They become active with the onset of the summer rains. They have this real nice little quacky call that you will hear on any rainy night in July on into August.
The ringtail edged out the white-tailed deer to become state mammal.
Ringtails are related to coatis, raccoons. They're strongly nocturnal. They once were very commonly associated with miners who kept them as pets. As a matter of fact, one of their nicknames are miners' cats. And miners liked them in those mine-type situations, in those mine shacks, because they kept the rodent populations down.
The Apache trout was the kids' overwhelming choice for state fish.
Truly one of our great heritage species, an animal that is a truly Arizona animal and found really only in Arizona. Not too long ago they were critically endangered fishes. The Game and Fish Department has been working very hard to reestablish Apache trout in a variety of different habitats, and they're actually doing very, very, very well.
If you count insects as critters, then don't leave out the two-tailed swallowtail. It became our state butterfly in 2001.
You start out with one idea, and when you go out in nature and you see it, you know, it changes. Your initial plan could be totally thrown out the window. You just start over, and then it's better. I'm Jennifer Okuline, and I'm a wildlife painter. I think the point for me in painting is making a world that is not readily available to be seen. That painting speaks of the abundance in the world. That is a banana yucca, which has sprouted 3 spires as opposed to the usual 1 spike or bolt. And all the birds that would normally feast on this plant, they're all there, present and sharing the plant because it's so abundant they don't really need to fight for it. And then there is a bobcat resting in the foreground, and even though he is surrounded by all of the plants or all of the birds that he would otherwise devour, he's resting because he wants for nothing. I really like, you know, that they can all kind of just coexist in my vision, even if they don't at all in nature. Taking the artistic license, that's why it's fun. It's really only possible in art. I like to always make sure that there are diagonals that lead your eye around, so like this wonderful tail of the roadrunner will bring you up to this bird, to this great horned owl that, you know, even though it's not looking down, the light will suggest your eye to follow this way to the Harris hawk, which in turn will bring you back around. And there's kind of a constant flow visually, at least that's the goal. So right now all I'm going to do is get some color laid in there. The thing I like about oil paint is it's very forgiving because it stays wet for a very long time. You can come back and pull things out with a rag or add more color or just change the color entirely. It's funny how we sometimes think we know what something looks like, but to actually go out in the desert and walk around and see a plant change during the course of a year, or even watch a saguaro grow over the course of 10 years, you know, these things are something that there's history in each one of them. So it's really important to be around them and to see how the animals and birds, you know, interact with them too. I like to use the animals as people in a lot of ways. So the painting I'm working on right now is actually about a bunch of birds sharing a saguaro, as similar to humans sharing a high-rise. It's basically an apartment complex for all these birds. The working title is Sonoran Skyrise. This is, you know, the idea that we can pretend that all these birds are willing to hang out together, which they are not. You know, it's just kind of I don't know, I just like being able to make something new and not shocking, but a little bit surprising. You need to move. You do need to move. I have 3 dogs and 4 cats. I'm a bit of an animal person, I guess. I did grow up on a little farm in Wisconsin, so animals have just always been a part of my life. I've had a lot of people, a lot of collectors, they'll ask me, do you work from photographs? And you know, the simple fact is in most cases that's my only option. Understanding anatomy is very important whether you're painting humans or animals. So I have a lot of taxidermy that I use just primarily as reference, and then it becomes, you know, just part of my collection. I feel like the luckiest person ever because I get to do what I love, and there are days when it is very hard and very frustrating, but it's feeling better. I love what I do. It is always a surprise, And you know, always a challenge, and sometimes I think I'm going to finish something today, and that's just not the case, because it needs to be better than it is. And so just keep trying, and then at some point I'll just know. I always love it when people, of course, approach my paintings and smile, but when they start to identify the different species, and when they question why they're all together, my goal has been accomplished. They've been engaged, and that's really the primary goal.
Anytime you walk outside and you think, man, this is a shorts and t-shirt day, that's a great day for rattlesnakes, Gila monsters, and a variety of other things that you may or may not want to encounter on your hike. What most people don't realize, if they spend a lot of time outdoors hiking or hunting or whatever, that they have walked literally within inches probably of these animals many, many times and never had a negative encounter. And that's really where a lot of the confusion comes from. People feel like these things are out to get them and that they're just waiting for any opportunity to pounce upon the unsuspected hiker or hunter. When in reality, these animals go through great lengths to avoid conflicts with human beings. So just like you would hide from any potential danger, these animals do the same thing. And they are defensive, not aggressive. They don't go looking for trouble, but if trouble finds them, they're happy to defend themselves. One of the things that we hear very commonly, people are out hiking and they encounter a rattlesnake on the trail, and they become very frustrated because they don't feel that they can pass this animal. Rattlesnakes strike roughly half to 3/4 their body distance. And so by giving a rattlesnake, even a 6-foot rattlesnake, a modest area, you can safely move around one without any problem. Matter of fact, if you encounter a rattlesnake on the trail, the answer to it is don't try to move it out, don't try to scare it off by throwing rocks at it. The answer is to just move around it, leave it alone. And in fact, what often happens is people encounter one of these snakes and it coils up and it rattles and it takes a defensive position because it perceives itself in danger. As long as you hover close to that animal is going to stay defensive and it's going to hold its ground. Oftentimes, if people would just take 2 large steps backwards or give it a 20 or 30 foot area of clearance, that animal will quickly retreat to the nearest shelter for its own protection because it's very, very, very frightened of you. So give these animals a little distance. Don't try to capture them. Don't try to kill them. Leave them be. They're a big part of our natural environment. They're an important part of our natural environment. They belong out there. So really, 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 when you look at it, even though there's a lot of these things out there, and many of these things are venomous, very few of them are dangerously venomous. And when you look at statistics, you're far more likely to die by slipping in the bathtub or getting struck by lightning than you are to die from a venomous snake bite in Arizona. So when it really comes down to it, these animals are venomous to acquire their prey, not to kill you, your pets, or your children, and they go through great lengths to avoid conflicts with human beings. They really try to stay out of our way.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to join us next week, and remember, get out there and enjoy those Arizona wildlife views.